Well, welcome back to the ITAM kitchen, the place where we're always cooking things up and topics that you really don't talk about every day. And we have a lot of fun with it, right? But we also talk about a lot of collaboration, improvements, things. Again, topics you're not going to learn in the classroom, not insightful. This is your classroom. This is the kind of the best classroom you'll ever learn because I'm bringing in expertise, the folks that are expert in their fields to do things like that. And for those that are new to the ITAM kitchen, welcome. This is literally about exactly that. How do you look at asset management, software asset management, and configuration management? I kind of put it all together, but I said ITAM kitchen, keep it simple. And figure out, okay, how can we have open discussions about this? What topics do we want to talk about? Have that open collaboration, because what I've found is all my friends, and I have friends like 15, 20 years in the industry, things like that. They said, let's just talk. And when we talk, we'll talk for hours on the phone. I said, we need to put and we always say we should record this and make podcast recordings out of it. That's how this all started. Now we've been doing it daily for over 2 weeks. This has been awesome. I'm loving it. Everybody else is loving it. I'm seeing everybody come in. Hey, if you're on chat, if you put in chat where you're from, appreciate it. Definitely chime in on that. Make that happen. And today's topic, I know we know nothing about in our own heads, right? ADHD. We hear about it all the time, right? And ADHD and how that's kind of a hidden asset for us in our skill set, et cetera. And this came out of a topic, a little bit of background on this with Chad and I. We were just chatting away. He says, well, I want to talk about it and make this happen. It's like, okay. It's like, okay, let's chat, because ADHD in our world, we love it, but people just don't know how to work with us, right? And think about that. It goes, oh, wow, I never thought about it. It's like, okay, let's have a discussion, bring you online, let's have fun. And I know Chad, he and I have been together a lot of things. We speak together. We do things that if you're working on speaking and programming, Toastmasters, highly recommend it. Get one of their local groups, or if you want to do something over the web or something like that via Zoom, we can do that too. Highly recommend it because it just helps your speaking ability. It's like, well, I'm apprehensive. I get it. That was me 20 years ago. Look at me now. Now, do I credit all the Toastmasters? I don't, but Toastmasters had a complete curriculum to help you grow and thrive, and you're amongst peers who understand the struggles you're going through. We've all been there. Anyway, a little plug there, but before we get into our topic, I want Chad to introduce himself and give a little bit of background in how you got into the topic, in particular as far as ADHD.
Well, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. So I have my connection to ITAM asset management is in the IT space. I've been in IT for 25 years, not as a developer. I'm on the other side of the house. Operating systems, networking, cybersecurity, policies, the cloud, user help desk, all of that stuff. That's my wheelhouse, and I've been doing that for a long, long time. So that's how I came into the IT space. And I met Bill through Toastmasters. That's originally where we met. So in terms of how did I get into ADHD, I have 3 sons, and the middle son struggled a lot in school, going through middle school, going through high school. Everything was just a big challenge for him. My mom was the one who said, hey, you really should get your son and see if he's got ADHD. I think I see a lot of symptoms here. And I put it off. I thought, no, that can't be him. That's not the issue. She wore me down. Took a couple of years. She wore me. You know how mothers can be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I finally started to research into ADHD, and the more that I read into it, the more that I looked into it, the more I was finding myself in the description of the symptoms. And about a year and a half ago, I got myself diagnosed through 2 different methods. So the standard method is psychiatry diagnosis. So they'll give you a questionnaire, you fill that out, you take the questionnaire back to the psychiatrist, and then they'll interview you based on their deep knowledge and arrive at, and then later on I went and was also diagnosed using a physical diagnosis method where they evaluate the function of your brain by looking at your eye function, your audio function, your ability to smell, because the olfactory is connected to the brain, and also a variety of balance things. And both tests came back and said, yes, you have ADHD. So at that point, What happens? You get interested in something with ADHD. I turned on the hyper-focus machine. And in about a year, I read 20 separate books about ADHD, learning about it from the medical standpoint, the scientific standpoint, the lived experience standpoint, and really reading all of the subject to find out about it. So I come to the podcast today basically as a regular guy, a layman who is self-educated about ADHD, but deeply so. Not an expert, not a scientist, not a doctor, but can also give you the lived experience since I've had it for 50 years. So that's how I came to the ADHD, Bill. All right, it was just that broken path that we all follow.
And the interesting part we've had in our conversations, Chad, is when we think about ADHD, we kind of have this stigma, right? As far as high functioning, low functioning, et cetera, right? We have this stigma. It's kind of hands off. People don't know how to work with those individuals, et cetera. And what you and I have been talking about is the reality is we actually all have a little bit of ADHD one way or another, especially in this space. It is for all of IT, but okay, asset management, software asset management, configuration management. If it wasn't for ADHD, it wouldn't help. There's no way we could have focused on multiple things the way what we do in our role, right? As an example. So it was interesting how we started that conversation, and we just went crazy over that, right? In particular, you want to expand upon that, Andy?
Yeah, so in the IT world in general, I think a lot of people who have ADHD gravitate towards IT, and there's a couple reasons. So the first reason is because there are so many interesting things inside of IT. In a given day, depending on your discipline, you can be working on 2 things, 3 things, 10 things, a dozen different things. So you can move from interesting topic to interesting topic and do so very, very quickly. There's a lot of room for creativity in IT also. I mean, fundamentally, what are we doing all day long? Solving problems. But so often you have to think outside the box. You have to engage your pattern recognition, which is something that is an ADHD strength. You have to engage your creativity. You have to connect a lot of disparate subjects and see how it is that they relate so you can come up with new solutions. That kind of thing is readily available inside of IT, whether you're a developer, you're an ITAM, you're an infrastructure networking. Pardon me. So I think that's very, very appealing. We know historically that a lot of creative people go into IT because it's interesting. And here's the key about ADHD. A lot of people think that it is it's a focus problem, and it is, but you need to understand the nuance behind that. With ADHD, the real challenge is regulating the focus. So folks who would be in psychology terms classified as neurotypical, meaning you don't have ADHD, you don't have autism, you don't have OCD, you don't have any of those kind of things. You can control your focus. You can focus on one thing and then decide to switch, and then decide to switch to something else. And you can just turn that switch like this because you've got control over it. You can regulate it. But with ADHD, that regulation is much, much more difficult. The thing that helps the focus is something that's interesting. If you find a subject that's interesting, all of a sudden your brain lights up and it does all these neurological things like releases dopamine and releases serotonin, and this assists you with regulating your focus. So ADHD people are often jumping from thing to thing to thing because they're looking for something that's more interesting. And in IT, because there's such a huge variety of subjects, you can do that all the time, all day long. I think that's one of the reasons why we're so attracted to it.
Well, it is. It's interesting that within our space, right? And I'll speak for me. I never thought about having the ADHD. Even I grew up in that type of environment. My father was very much ADHD. He wasn't labeled, because I kind of feel that's a label to a degree, right? He wasn't labeled as such, but as an inventor, he very much was so, right? I mean, electronic genius in many different ways. I miss him today because I literally could call him up on the phone and say, Dad, I need help with this and some electronics or antenna or something like that. And he'd immediately give me a response. Whereas it would take me like 3 months to figure it out. Right? It's like, here it is. It's like, I don't know how you did it, and I'm not going to ask questions. And I do miss that today. I miss those conversations because, again, that he's laser focused and he just didn't think about it. He loves it. It's just, to your point, it's what he loved. But what I didn't realize is how that enhanced me and my skills by being around someone like that. Because I was the collaborator, because we struggled, right, and making income. Usually when if anybody's been around an inventor, they're going to say the money wasn't always there. If you were, you're very blessed, but typically it's not, because you're too busy trying to focus on that next thing. What do you else want to grow and throw at it, et cetera? You just, again, ADHD. And as you work through that, it's like, okay, I had to figure out how to communicate between him and his customers. I was the communicator, the translator. And little did I know, I was actually being mentored for what I do now. That was my entire career, is how I communicate. I was always the integration guy. And I loved it because it's what I always did. But it also gave me the variety, because I worked all these different technologies, the people, work the different use cases. And all of a sudden I realized, it's like, I really love it because, again, I've always done it. And now I was able to work in a field where actually I thrived, and I was around technology. I've been around technology since 80, right? And some people have been around technology before that. That's great. But by doing that, allowed me, in some of the conversation you and I've been having, all of a sudden, again, I'm thinking over the last 55 years, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how much I was influenced by someone ADHD. And I probably have a little bit myself. I was like, do I have to be tested? I'm not going to. I probably, right? I'll just say, okay, yeah, I'm spastic. There you go. But but you also think about some of the best influencers we have in society, right?
Oh yeah. If you look back, across history, you can see that some of the most creative people that we know of, exhibited signs of ADHD. Now, ADHD as a classification, as a diagnosis, is historically, it's relatively recent. Really, it started out being called ADD, and then the psychological and psychiatric discipline, they changed their terminology and so on, called it ADHD. But let's go back to, here's one fellow, you may not have heard of him, but that's okay. His name is John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot. He's the guy who developed the OODA loop. He developed the concept of the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, act. This is a loop of action that the military uses all the time. He developed a new concept of warfare. For hundreds of years, attrition warfare was the dominant thing. You bring your forces together and you kill one another until one of the two of you has some guys left, and whoever's got guys left, they win. That's attrition warfare. And he came up with something called maneuverability warfare, where it's more like chess and you're moving around one another. Phenomenally creative, this guy, and ADHD off the charts. If you read his biography, you can see it. Edison, the same way. Tesla,
Absolutely,
same way. And you go further back, into other, big folks. Einstein was notoriously disorganized, right? In his office.
Look at his desk when he died.
Right.
Have you ever seen the desk when he died? It's. I'll say I can represent that desk. That's all. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
That kind of creative genius, disorganized, doesn't pay attention to things that quote regular people pay attention to. Yeah, what are hallmarks of ADHD? And so with your dad, if we go back to your dad and how you say that he struggled communicating with the customers, he struggled turning the creative insight that became his inventions into the regular, mundane, pedestrian business of making money from those inventions, right? Who wants to think linearly, right? Step by step by step, apply for the patent, make the money, deal with customers, when there are way more exciting things to do and invent, out there in the electrical space. That's, so much more appealing to him. And that gets us back into the interest-dominated motivation. So when we look at folks that have ADHD, and this may be something we deeper a little bit later, think about if they're on our team, if we're a manager of those people, a leader of those people, or even if they're a coworker, how can we support them? How can we support them so that they can use their zone of genius to really do what they're excellent at, work at their strengths, which is, pattern recognition, thinking outside of the box, creative leaps of imagination. And also another excellent strength of ADHD is dealing with a crisis. How do you support them? You found a way to support your dad. And how did you do that? You took some of the things off his plate that he struggled with. That's one of the major sort of categories of support, is just to remove some of those roadblocks. Don't expect your dad to operate the way you do, because clearly he doesn't, right? And
Yeah,
if you force
exactly.
him to do that, you lose that big strength that he's got, which is, again, the pattern recognition, the creativity, the dealing with the crisis, the moving through things quickly by seeing outside the box.
Absolutely. We got some comments coming at the same time. I love the one Don just put up. And, oh, there
Yeah.
it is. Okay. That was awesome. Mine runs 80 miles an hour. Only 80? Come on. You must be slowing down, Don. Strategic, visionary, and discernment describes me. There was an internal jab on that one, but that's okay. So we're having fun on that. But that nails it, right?
Yeah.
We're all thinking like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things about the ADHD brain, if we, stop for a minute and talk about, neurology, is that normal people, neurotypical people, they'll have dials in their brain. So they can dial things up. They can dial interest from 0 to 2 to 5 to 10. The ADHD brain works on switches. It's either on or off. So for example, like, Don says, my mind runs at 80 miles an hour. Your brain's got two gears. I know because I've experienced this personally. Off or maximum afterburner. There is no in between.
Oh,
Yeah. And if the same thing goes for your emotions when you feel emotions. So you've either got, I don't feel anything at all and things are kind of meh and I don't care, or I feel it intensely. If you're angry, you're rageful. If you're sad, you're depressed. If you're happy, right, it's like orgasmic level happiness, even if you're just
Yes.
talking about coffee, right, or the color of a Porsche.
Get the caffeine. You don't need caffeine. Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't. Well, you think about some of the leaders we have today, like, you and I have been Toastmasters, right? I keep bringing up Tony Robbins. He used to be world champion for Toastmasters, and that's how he got started speaking 60 years ago or whatever. Right? Yeah, he was like 2 when he started, but that's beside the point. But he has ADHD. You look at him focusing on his presentation skills, it's all in his head. He presents it, but what's going to come out of his mouth? Even his team says, I have no idea what's going to come out of his mouth, right? Brendan Bouchard, I actually personally he's one of my mentors, or somebody I get mentored by. And it's like sometimes he will totally switch it on a whim. And it's like, here's where we're going. They go, okay, it all works out, right? But you guys see me do the same thing sometimes, whether it's here speaking, presenting. You guys saw me do it at the ITAM Summit. We have to switch it up. Fine, we'll figure it out, right? But to your point, if anybody's been hearing anything I've been presenting for the last couple of years, actually specifically since I've gone live and broadcasting with whether it's webinars or LinkedIn, whatever, right? I also say focus on what you're really good at and don't do everything. Because, and that's why I want to that's what I really love about the whole ADHD topic, because that actually helps narrow it in. Because what you're interested in, you personally, is going to be much different than what I'm interested in. It's not that we're not both in asset management, software asset management, configuration management, but we're at different levels. And it's okay to be like that. Versus people are trying to group us all together, so you need all this stuff. Stuff's relevant, right? But you may not have the skills for it. Just raise your hand and say, I'm good at it, I'm not. That's what us as practitioners, we struggle with.
Yeah.
We want to know it all because that's IT, right? We want to know it all, perfection, etc. But being able to say, you know what? I probably do have a little bit of that. I don't know if I want to label it that, but let me just call it out. This is what I like and what I don't like, just to make sure I'm enjoying the role I have. Because here's what I've seen. I've seen a lot of people just change jobs from one company to the next because they're frustrated with the people, etc. They go to that next company. They get frustrated for the same reason. Because they took on the role versus working within their own skill set. It had nothing to do with the environment. Yeah, some challenges. I mean, you have the different parts, right? But being able to say, okay, how can you work through that? That's the important part that I've even had to work through, is to figure out, okay, how do you work with the people? Found out I'm a people person. I just love it, right? And all of a sudden, that's a part of me. Again, I've been around my entire life, but I didn't realize it. Okay, here, communication. I had to figure out how to better communicate. Great. But it's being able to be focus on what you're really good at and thrive, and then figure out what you want to expand to. Back to your point, what's that next area of interest? Oh, that's my entire career. But I didn't realize that until we started talking, Chad.
Well, yeah. So one thing that is today, like, and basically since social media was invented, one thing that can be a little bit confusing is who's got ADHD and who doesn't. And part of the reason why is because social media has conditioned everyone to want to switch topics all the time. And part of that, I don't know if you remember, this actually goes way back to the very first day that MTV came out. I remember watching MTV when it first came out in the 80s. Yep. And I would watch the videos intensely because they would only show 3 to 4 seconds of a scene before the camera would change. It would show some different part of the scene.
Okay. Yeah.
And I kept wanting to like see the whole scene, and they would never let you do it. Well, social media borrowed the same thing. And so they trained us, through, for example, the endless scroll. They trained us to always be looking for the next thing. And so now lots of people show signs of ADHD, symptoms, behaviors of ADHD, even though the underlying neurological conditions may not be there. But Edward Hallowell, if you're interested in learning more about ADHD and kind of getting a view, if you think you've got it, you want to learn more about it, Edward Hallowell is a great author. He's a medical doctor. He also has ADHD, and he has a practice where he coaches and helps people with ADHD. He's written a couple books on him. ADHD 2.0 is a wonderful book, and also the ADHD Explained. Those are also excellent. Both of those are excellent books as an intro to that. His opinion is that after working with ADHD people for decades, he says probably 25 to 30% of the population has got ADHD at some point. And just like autism, ADHD is a spectrum. So it can be, very, very deep and severe. It can be very, very light. And so where it is that you fall on that spectrum, you got to figure that out for yourself, right? Nobody knows you except for you. You are the mystery that you have to solve. And part of the reason is no one can go inside. No one can tell you what it feels like on the inside. How do you feel when you get overwhelmed? If you walk into a room and the room is really, really loud, is that too much? Do you want to leave the room? What does that feel like? And so on and so forth. These are all kind of parts of the puzzle that you need to, experiment with internally in order to figure out if you do have ADHD, where you are and where you sit.
Well, the other thing I want to note is, because I'm also a high performance coach, right? And glad you know that, because it's easily, when you get labeled or label yourself with ADHD, you can get kind of depressed, right? You kind of get that label. It's easily done. Society's done it to us. And we kind of do it to ourselves too. It gets reinforced, right? But what you want to realize is actually, so what? You have that label, right? Or try to get rid of the label. And in some ways you want to have the label. It does depend upon you. Everyone has their individual reasons why they want it or don't. But here's where I want to take that is, if you didn't have that in your head, ADHD at all, what kind of person would you really be today? How would you explain yourself if you take that out of the equation? High performing, very successful, struggling a little bit here and there, figuring out how to work with people, but I'm actually doing pretty well. I've been doing this for a long time, and being able to further excel and communicate with people. See what we just did? We just took that whole aspect to say, okay, we have ADHD, and we're saying, oh, wow, we're an asset. And that's important, because for our own mindset, we can easily just stick in our head and we go nowhere, right? We get that part and we're just there. Okay, so we had a bad childhood and we're still doing it as an adult. Why are you worried about the childhood when you're an adult? You can have a whole different world. I won't go crazy on that, but think about how positive the outcome's been because you've been able to work through it and with it. That's important, right? Now, do you have the right supporting characters and network for you? And that's part of what I'd love to go into next is how we can collaborate and help understand, communicate, as well as understand ourselves a little bit more in the space. Because I think that's also important. Again, I've always been the integration guy. So technology, I always had a knack for it. Fine. Okay. I learned how to code from scratch. Trust me, I was on a Z80 chip when I first started back in the 80s. So the Timex Sinclair 1000, right? My dad didn't know how to do it, so I figured it out, and there I went. Started running programs from high school, et cetera, and it just continued. This is a hobby that pays. Literally, this is not what I planned on doing for with college, et cetera. But I say that because when you figure out what your niche is and what you enjoy, you get to enjoy it more. And I think that's going to help us as all in all, irrelevant of what role it is and how we are, where we are currently in life. Because we figure out how we can enjoy it more. So we have ADHD. Great. That's awesome. Now I can narrow and focus in what I really enjoy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. If we go back to the idea of, ADHD being a label, being a negative label, here's how you view it is going to depend on what you concentrate on. So here's something to understand. ADHD as a condition is the most studied neurodiverse condition in the psychological field, period, paragraph. More research has been done on medication for ADHD than any other psychological condition. More studies have been done on ADHD than any other psychological condition. And so it is incredibly well understood right now. Now, do we understand everything about it? No, of course not. Science and medicine are forever evolving. But there's a huge body of knowledge about it. And furthermore, more and more adults in particular are coming to discover that they actually, do have ADHD. They didn't know that as a child. And so the awareness of the number of people who realize that they've got ADHD, that number is getting bigger and bigger. So the collective body of experience and the collective body of knowledge is growing. So when you first realize that you have ADHD, if you fall into that category, you may go through a grieving process, right? Trying to figure out, is this bad? Is this good? How do I think about this? What's going on? When I first learned that I had ADHD, I went through a grieving process because I started to think to myself, what could have been? What could have been? That's an emotional process that you are more than likely to go through. And you know what? It's perfectly okay. It's just one of the stages that you move through so that you can get to the point where you really realize and can focus on and can leverage all of the positives that come along with this particular neurological makeup. One of the positives what you identified, Bill, is focus, hyperfocus.
Oh yeah.
When you find something that you're interested in, you can just do it and do it and do it and do it, almost like, beyond what other people can do, beyond what other people can go. I had a colleague, and they would say of him, he had ADHD, when this guy works normally, he's worth two people. He can do two people's worth of work. But if he gets turned on to something that he's really interested in, he's 5 people's worth of work, right? And that identifies the hyper-focus. So when you find something that's interesting, and either Don in the comments or Robert in the comments, one of the two said, what about rabbit holing? Hyper-focus definitely is the rabbit hole, right? You find a subject and you just burrow into it as deeply as possible. You will find things that other people can't find. You will come up with solutions that other people can't come up with because of the creativity and the incredible energy and the hyper-focus that comes along with it. But in order to get to that stage where you can view it as a positive, oftentimes you have to walk through the journey of understanding it more, maybe going through some grief, and that's perfectly okay. It's all part of the package.
What's also about when you get grief, let's dig into that a little bit because that's an important part, right? So we all struggle with grief, right? In so many different ways. I have my own grieving process I had to deal with for about 1.5 years, and all of a sudden I found the spark and I'm good. And that's a whole different story, but it had nothing. It was sort of this, but it was something completely different. But what I'm saying with ADHD, when you start thinking about grief, when I think about, okay, if I'm going to do and be grieving, that means I just compared myself to something. There's a comparison. And the reality is you can't really compare yourself to anybody because you're unique. And what you need to do, and I'm just going to give a little guidance on that from a coaching standpoint, is you have to say, where have I been? What have I accomplished? Yeah, okay, so some things didn't work out. You know what happens when that happens? You know what you're not good at. Right? You know where to very focus. It's kind of like going down the road. We don't go between the lines. We're very focused on our own lines, right? And when you think about when you start grieving, it's like, okay, I'm not like this person, that person. I can't present like them, et cetera. It's like, I get it. So you have goals. Those are goals. But don't diminish your ability to say you can get there. And I'll give an example. It was back, I won't name the company because it'll point out the person specifically. I was doing pre-sales, and I'm a ad hoc type presenter. I'll do it on a whim, et cetera. I'm not scripted. You give me scripts. I tested this a couple years ago. I cannot read scripts to save my life and memorize them. It's just not me. I am not a memorization. Some people love it. I can't. It's just not me, right? And this person wanted me to memorize a script for a presentation. I can present it to a very large audience. It's like, okay. And it's like, and they got on me big time. This is my manager. And they said, well, this is easy. It's like, it's not for me. It's just not me, right? You give me that scripts, I just can't do it. I have to itemize it. I'll come up with it, et cetera. I might be a little wrong. I'll admit I'm wrong. I'll move on. That's just me. You guys have seen me even do it over the last couple of weeks on this, right? In this format. Big event happened. I looked for ways to get out of that person's realm. I knew I couldn't grow. I knew they were not going to allow me to grow. So I went and looked for an out. I was fired the next week. But here's what I learned out of it. It's the best thing ever happened to me. To your point, I had a little bit of grieving. It's like, oh, come on, I can't present for anything, et cetera, right? That literally was, you know what that's done to me since? I get fired up every time I hear it. I'm one of the largest voices you have in the space now. And it's not about ego. I don't say it egotistically. But I'm able to communicate, connect, irrelevant where you are, right? Whether it's customers, practitioners, et cetera, meeting new people. Over the last year, I had to learn how to date all over again, how to communicate at a whole different level, right? I will say it's worked pretty well, but if it wasn't for me to go, okay, down, and it's like, well, I'm sorry it didn't work, but I've been able to excel ever since. You have to realize how you can use that to your superpower, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
When you think about it, keep going, go for it.
I wanted to reopen that subject about the mismatch between your bosses who wanted you to present using a fixed script and you who were, really more ad hoc. What you see there, at least what I see there when I hear that story, is I see the mismatch between folks who know nothing about ADHD and want you to operate and behave in a very specific way, and you who has ADHD or ADHD-like symptoms and have a completely different operating system. For most people who have ADHD, they've spent their life around people who don't. And people who don't kept saying, you are weird, different, too much, too intense, too lazy, you procrastinate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They use all this language trying to figure out why the person with ADHD behaves the way that they do. One interesting thing about that is the person who doesn't have ADHD has zero access to what it's like to have ADHD. So they're trying to explain ADHD performance in non-ADHD terms. And you will often get all kinds of language in there that includes shame, guilt, blame, negative, et cetera, et cetera. If you've got ADHD and you begin to learn about it, what happens is you discover that mode of operating, the non-ADHD mode of operating, just doesn't work for you. And over time, you learn how you do work and you give yourself permission to work that way. And that lifts so much negativity off you. You can actually begin to operate in the world in a way that really works. In general terms, what that means is nonlinear, right? You're not going to go to bed at 10:30 p.m. every night. You're not going to wake up at 6:30 a.m. every morning and brush your teeth and eat breakfast and go to work and be happy with that, because ADHD is a dysregulated nervous system. So you've got to find a way to jump around and do things that are different from the normal, disciplined, regulated, linear, step-by-step kind of mode. For you to get fired from that job, as you identified, what are the best things for you? Why? Because it allowed you to escape from the expectations that were never going to work for you, ever.
That's correct. Huge. Huge.
At the time, it probably hurt. But in the long run, you can see just what kind of benefits it was to get out of that kind of prison of expectations.
Oh, it was. And the sad part was everyone else loved me because of my ad hoc approach to helping work with customers. Is this person. And the reason why I bring that up, so we can all hear it, right, is when you think about our roles, when we talk about asset management, the hardware, software configuration, we can go cloud, whatever you are, right? We have to work with a lot of people. A lot of people. And this week, you've heard about a lot of different topics. We've talked about business cases. We've talked about lots of different pieces, right? We have to figure out how to talk with people and work with people with different, I'll say, mind dimensions. I'll just call it that, right? There are different frames of mind as far as, okay, where are they? What are they working on? They may have ADHD, maybe not, but we have to figure out how to work and collaborate with this. And I'm just a little lover to ADHD because, okay, so I'll qualify myself as ADHD. Great. So be it. I still have to talk with that person, even if I don't have a label. How do I do that, right? And when you think about our super focus, we have a specific goal we want. And say it's a report, right? Here's a report, but we're not good at it. It's just not our forte because we don't like graphics. I'm guilty of that. I'm better now, but I had to learn how to deal with graphics. A whole different story on that one. But when you figure out what you're really good at, you ask for help in this other area. And that's the whole idea about community, right? You have to find your tribe, your community to come around. And I'll give an example. I didn't even think, I thought about this as we were talking, right? So back in high school, I was one of those kids that people called in. I went to the principal's office, is the best way to put it, right? I went to the principal's office. I didn't go for the typical reason. I was usually called to the principal's office to deal with a technology problem they had in the office because no one else could figure it out. I was one of those kids. And this is the mid to late 80s, okay? I'm an 80s kid. And they knew they could call me. I mean, I ran, the LED boards were brand new. I was running, no one else could figure it out. They were thrilled because we had the lunch menu out there. Everybody could see it. Everyone knew where to go for lunch, et cetera. It was great. Before all the different options you have now. Now it's crazy, but it's different. But they had the new computers, kind of a mid-frame mainframe in there. But literally when they messed up or the PC messed up or something like that, I was the guy they called in. The kid, they had no one else to support it. They had to call the desk, right? But I say that because I was called for that. But here's the thing. I took a computer class my senior year. It's like, okay, and keep in mind, I've been programming about 6 years at this point, right? Okay, I'm taking just for fun. I had nothing else to do, fun, do it. And I don't know if anybody was remembers a program called Logo. Back in the day, it was a little turtle and you made these little designs in it, right? To me, it was the most boring class ever. Why? I literally, because we were in Kmart's and Walmart's, et cetera, I was putting in, when you had the computers up there, Commodore 64, I was the one making a print screen on thing and going crazy. I was one of those kids, right? I wasn't worried about making little designs on the screen. Graphics was never my thing. I was bored as heck at that. And I got behind. In 2 minutes, I caught up. But I say that because I didn't realize it until we're thinking now where my focus was. I was focused on the data because that's all I ever knew. I've always been a database guy. You give me the data, I'll make it flow and flow chart for you, et cetera. And now I can also do presentations because I've gained those skills, but that took a while. But also it's about knowing your forte, right? And I say that back to what our discipline is: asset management, software asset management, configuration management, right? Focus on what you're really good at. And again, you've heard me say this for a while. Get better at it. Be the best at it. Then if you have the inkling to go somewhere else or go to a different angle, then bring it in. Is that just like what Chad was talking about? It's your interest. Totally do it. Because sometimes those performance reviews you get and you get dinged because, okay, you didn't contribute all this other stuff. I'll say for me, if I'm working for an organization and give me a performance review, I laugh at them. Like, I go, why? It's like, it provides no value to me. You want to expand upon that anyway? That's how I look at it, because then I do my thing. I know where my focus is. I know where I want to be. Why am I worried about, I want to help contribute to the team? That's great. And you want to put all these additional requirements that make no sense to me. Why do I want to do this? Right?
Yeah, it gets back to that expectation of how you're going to behave, how you're going to perform. And if you focus on your strengths, obviously you're going to go a lot further. Here's a couple things. Let's just talk about a couple things that could help folks that have ADHD as a support, right? When we talk about, okay, there's some problems where we struggle with, how can we help ourselves with support? One of the things that's really tough for folks that have ADHD is prioritizing, like looking at a great big list and then figuring out, what am I supposed to do first? What am I supposed to do second? And so on. That prioritization is really, really tough. If you can find support for that, that's really helpful. One of the things that can help you enormously if you have ADHD is AI. And of course, the strength in AI is how you use it,
Yep.
So, and how you use it boils down to the prompts that you're going to give AI. This is one of the ways that I use AI to deal with the prioritization issue. I'm going to AI, I create a prompt, I'll tell it, hey, I want you to be my ADHD coach because I have ADHD. I'm having trouble prioritizing things right now. And then I'll give it the big list of all the things that I'm trying to decide between. And I'll tell it the things that need to be done, within a certain time period. And then at the end, I'll say, please help me sort this. Ask me one question at a time if you need to fill in any gaps. AI essentially is a cognitive function machine, right? Like literally that's all it does. It's an unlimited mind that can analyze things rationally. And that part, that executive function, which oftentimes is analysis, prioritization, impulse, restraint, that sort of thing, that's the part in ADHD that really has a hard time coming online. So if you can give a prompt like that to AI, you can help it, help it to help you figure out what to do in terms of prioritization. I'll often go to AI too and just present it with a problem. Hey, I've got ADHD. It's 3 p.m. I'm tired. I have to solve this problem. Please help me work through it. Ask me one question at a time. So that can be a tremendous self-help to you. Incredibly helpful. Another piece, this is another tip as well. Working memory in people with ADHD is often reduced. So the number of things that you can hold in your mind as a list is pretty small. I can hold 3 things easy. 4 things, okay. We get into 5 to 7 and I'm starting to get maxed out. Like we get to 7 and I don't remember thing 1 anymore. When I go into a bookstore and I look at the magazine rack, and I love to read, I love books, the magazine rack looks like, this is what the magazine rack is like. It's like 1,000 beautiful women all calling my name at the same time. And I want to read every single magazine simultaneously. And I can't figure out which one to read first. And so I read none of them. Working memory is a real challenge. And trying to decide between a big list is a real challenge. So giving yourself some support just from a prioritization standpoint, just from a working memory standpoint, this can help you move through the normal, tedious, linear, pedestrian elements, in your job that don't seem very interesting, but yet still honestly need to get done. So those are all kinds of things that you can do to, help yourself, or if you've got coworkers that have ADHD, to help them figure out that, hey, they need to support as well, and you can help them too.
Absolutely. We had an interesting comment put by Robert. I think we could have fun with a little bit, because this is golden. Introspective examination. What I'm not good at. So I appreciate you being vulnerable there, Robert. We all have this problem. Leads me to find people to fit within your own gaps. Absolutely. But here's what I want to expand upon this a little bit, because you nailed it. I was trying to introspect inside of a head that we're in fight or flight mode. That's what our minds are made for, right? And trying to figure out, like, how do we overcome it? Sometimes we can't do it by ourselves. Okay, sometimes we leverage counselors. Where I recommend it, and Chad knows Chad's actually does this with me, or I do with Chad, is coaching. Find a coach to be able to help you with that from an external side, because when you have an external party help with that, and one thing I do within the co-op, I actually am a high performance coach. It's a very structured program and doing exactly that. But when you think about that, it's not about you to be judgmental. It's about you looking on the introspection and asking the right questions to help you grow. And that's important, right? And I say that for everybody, right? Whether you're here live or you're hearing that after the fact, you have to have some type of coaching for you to excel. And that's not a demeaning thing. Actually, it's just the opposite. It helps you grow and thrive, because that little bit of investment you do for coaching, you all of a sudden, the doors open for you. The floodgates of success are there all of a sudden, because you're able to focus on what you're really doing. That's huge. So I wanted to drill on that. And Chad, you want to expand that at all a little bit on some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the asking for help, is definitely something that is very, very, very useful. Here's the challenge. There's two challenges. One, perfectionism.
Absolutely.
Is the number one ADHD thought distortion, perfectionism. And so often, because of our experience across life, we've adopted some mindsets, we've adopted some thinking frames that involve the word should. I should be able to do this. I should be able to solve this on my own. I should be good at introspection. And those, while those statements might feel true in your mind because they've been repeated so often across the decades, it doesn't mean that they're true. Mm-hmm. Any statement that includes the word should, I would offer up to you, is fictional.
As Tony Robbins says, don't should all over yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So when you discover that you've got a problem, the hardest thing is to not listen to that voice inside your head that says, I shouldn't have this problem, but rather to reach out to other people and say, I'm experiencing this challenge right now, and I need some help trying to figure it out. And Bill talked about a coach. Coaches can be incredibly helpful. Mentors fall in that same category. There's something that will help a lot for you to get things done. It's a much lower level of support than a coach, the coach is going to really dive deep with you. But it's something called co-working. So if you're having a hard time getting something done, you can pair up with somebody else and say, hey, I'm trying to work on this project. Do you have something to do? Let's work on these things together. Not that we're collaborating with one another, but you sit on that side of the table, I'll sit on this side of the table, or screen if you wanted to do it on Zoom. You work on your thing, I'll work on my thing. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to get done by the end of the hour. And then you ask me about that. And it helps you to co-regulate your nervous system so that you can begin to focus and kind of put to rest a lot of those voices inside your head just for a little while that tell you you shouldn't need this, you should be able to do it on your own, that sort of thing. It's another one of those supports that you can bring to bear to help you overcome some of these problems. There's nothing wrong at all with having trouble with introspection. In fact, that goes back to your nervous system and how developed it is or how it's not developed is part of neurobiology. In fact, feeling what's going on inside of you is called interoception. Interoception. It's the ability, for example, to feel when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you're thirsty, when you've got ADHD. Times those interoceptive signals, they send you weird messages, and it's hard to figure out.
Absolutely. And from a community or pairing up with somebody, that's the whole reason why I created the community as well, as far as the IT management co-op, is exactly that. I'll throw a little note up there, nugget if you want to. Is think about if you're looking for a home because you're trying to do it solo, like, feel free. Seriously, it's not free. It is a paid for community. I would just be brutally honest, but it's also well worth the investment, because when you start investing in yourself, that's the best thing in the world. And I'll give an example. Warren Buffett one time was asked, if those that don't know Warren Buffett, he's like the gagillionaire and the oracle of the financial. And he was asked one time, okay, what's the most fruitful investment you ever made? He said he took a class. I can't remember. No, it wasn't. I think it was Dale Carnegie class, actually. Yeah, it was, because, anyways, and for several reasons, Dale Carnegie. Took a Dale Carnegie class, learning how to speak and present for public speaking. So the best thing you can ever do is invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, no one can ever take it away from you. And I say that from an ADHD part as well, because as IT professionals, we're in the world, we get all trained, we get certified, whatever, right? And okay, these certs, great. Some people know my opinion on some of them. That's great. But everything is given to you. Someone else is paying for it. In this case, you have to do it yourself. And sometimes what you don't realize is that little extra push, that little extra nudge opens up those doors again beyond anything possible. Again, just a little insight on that, because it's being able to, how you put that forward. And my reason why I say that is because with ADHD and the community as a whole, we have to support each other. We have to be around each other. You have to be around others. Again, there's another comment. If you're in your head, you're dead. Right? There's the fight or fly. I've used a couple of comments, right? But ADHD is extremely important. If you realize you're stuck in that stigma, reach out. Colleague, friend, whomever, right? Reach out and say, okay, I need some help. There's nothing wrong with that. But also at the same time, if you're someone struggling with someone with ADHD, find out what they like. Find out what makes them tick. Maybe they don't want to deal with the data and they just gained a new role in this entire department to take your team on, but they're not the right fit. And ask them, okay, what do you want to see? What do you want to see for results? Because maybe they're just a reporter. They like to report and push things up. They don't want to see the data. When you understand that, it's not an ADHD problem. It's a communication and how you work with it. You may have the ADHD. That's great. So you like the data. It's like, and when they realize, okay, they just want the reports to push up. They don't care about the details in them, but because it's going to be good enough, they're going to trust what you have. And you say, I don't do reports, or I'm struggling with that. Now they can help you become more proficient in that area, depending upon what you're willing to put into it. You kind of see where I just went there. It's a two-way street. In a manager, you're doing just the same. Maybe you're you're into tick and make it happen. I know when I turned into be a director, I was really good at my skill. This is early 2000, around 9/11, just before 9/11. Had an entire team. Great, I'm a director, moving forward, have my own practice, have 5 people under me, we're billing, we're doing awesome. I was lost. I great with people, talk with people, integrations, etc. But I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until Chad and I have been talking the last couple of weeks. It's like, I just didn't know what to do, right? Didn't know how to respond. I now had to deal with personnel issues. I'm out of my league. It was to stretch me, so I've got that right. But it wasn't because it was just stretching me, but I just did not realize what I was walking into when I got that title. I wasn't entitled. I gained a title, right? But I thought, but at that hand, when you get that part, you think you're entitled. Technologist, right? See my point? And when you get ADHD and you realize you're focused on that hard, it's like, okay, somehow I need to raise my hand and ask for help. I'm totally out of my league. Now, it was a dot bomb, so I had a lot of other challenges too. It's, we can go stories just forever on that one. I learned a lot in a very year and a half I was there. I got a PhD in management at the same time. But my point is, if you're like this, you're going to a different role. All of a sudden, you realize you're way out of your league. Raise your hand for help. And maybe ADHD, maybe not. And don't worry about labeling yourself. But being able to say, I need help is not back to that point. Put it in there. Ask. So
Yeah,
as we're writing, go ahead, go for it.
Because asking for support, whether you got ADHD or not, right, is incredibly important. On a healthy team, nobody expects any one person to know everything and be able to solve all the problems by themselves.
But that's what. So that's a great point. Let's dig in that for a second. I know we're right at the top of the hour, but let's dig in that for a second. By default, we think just the opposite.
Sure, it's a should statement. I should know. I should be perfect.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because as IT technologists, that's what we're taught to do.
Right. Yeah.
Just realize sometimes what we're taught is not reality.
It's a fictional story in your mind, right? You believe it's true. It's not true. Yeah.
Well, you may even have made up the story and expanded it. You got the job. That's great. Now you're trying to execute. You're doing it for a multi-million-dollar company. You take over the asset management group, et cetera. It's a new role. Before then, you were just a hands-on keyboard type of individual working with data, doing reports. Now you have all these additional responsibilities. You just got overwhelmed. How do you work through that, right? It happens to all of us, right? But we'll talk about maturity a little bit. I think Randy might be going through that a little bit tomorrow, actually. But as we wrap up, because this has been fun, I cannot believe the hour's over, but it doesn't surprise, knowing you and me, we could talk for hours on irrelevant of what the topic is. And what you don't realize is Chad is a complete public speaker. He could probably do this whole thing in a baritone voice. Is it baritone or tenor? I can't remember.
Baritone, you got it. That's right.
Okay, it was a baritone. Yeah, he's a conditioned singer is the best way. That's what he was trained for at college, and now this is what he does. So it's awesome. So I appreciate Chad being here. Any final nuggets you want to give everyone as we wrap up?
You bet. If you think you got ADHD, dig into that subject. There is so much information out there, and one of the biggest assets that you can give yourself is understanding what ADHD is like, understanding how it operates in you. Give yourself the permission to go on that discovery journey. And you're going to find stuff that you never imagined you'd find, but can help you immensely. You can turn your life around. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. And speaking from someone who's gone through that complete journey on his own, me, myself, and I, three of me, right? Some significant changes in my entire life in the last 3 years, significant changes. And I figured out and I ended up being around my tribe that helped me through it all. Find out connection. Oh, am I still there? Okay. Look.
You're back. Oh, now you're gone.
I was lost. Okay, so for some reason I went offline for a second. Okay, there's no talent. Well, our moments. But no, raise your hand, get some coaching, move forward, and we'll talk about even some, okay, where can you go beyond that? Because a lot of us we're senior in our field, but we're still struggling. And I actually, you know what, I'm going to commit to it. We're going to do a session on that next week. Because I think that's critical for us. Because when we get, I wouldn't say senioritis. Don, I'll let you speak on that. That's a whole different topic. Yes, that was a jab. Yeah, he's on. Sometimes we don't know where to go because there is not a community or folks to go to. So let's talk about how we can further grow and thrive. And actually, Chad's going through one of those sessions right now. We're going through a coaching program like that. So let's talk about that next week. The reason behind it is say, okay, how can we further thrive and grow? This is part of it. Being able to communicate is huge, but also being able to say, okay, here's where my next steps are. And I have a plan. Also a plan. Well, thank you. I went a minute over, possibly 2. Really appreciate everybody and all the contributions. Chad, I appreciate you being here and doing it. Look forward to catching up with you a little bit further because we see each other basically every week right now with all the other stuff going on. Maybe I'll see you in an hour if I can make it to Toastmasters as well. So,
all right, great. My pleasure, Bill. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, let me chime off and we're good. Thank you. And I'll see you again, everyone again tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to see Rennie and we're going to talk about some of her journeys that she's had within the industry. See you tomorrow, everyone.